Welcome to Zoe Stories. My boss told me to dress up. Now I'm his elegant secretary. The morning sun filtered through the blinds, casting soft golden lines across the sleek wooden floor of my bedroom. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the neatly folded clothes laid out on the chair across from me. A crisp pencil skirt, a tailored blouse, and a pair of black heels. Not my usual casual attire, but the ones my boss had insisted I wear. Professional, elegant, impeccable, he had said over the phone yesterday, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. I ran a hand through my hair, letting my fingers brush against the soft strands of the wig I had prepared for moments like this. There was an odd thrill and anticipation, a tight knot of anxiety mixed with excitement that never left me when I dressed like this. For years, I had kept this side of myself hidden, a secret tucked away behind closed doors, whispered only to the mirror, the heels, the delicate skirts that hung in my wardrobe like forbidden treasures. I am Alex. By day, a diligent, unassuming office worker. Quiet, polite, always careful to blend in. By night, and whenever I had the chance, I am someone entirely different, a woman in heels, in skirts, in soft makeup, exploring a side of myself that society, colleagues, and even close friends never needed to see. This wasn't just a hobby. It was a secret identity, a passion that made my heart race and my mind tingle, even as fear of discovery kept me cautious. My phone buzzed. A message from Isabella. Are you ready for today? Don't be nervous. You look amazing. Isabella, my girlfriend, my anchor, my confidant in ways that no one else could understand. She knew about my secret life, had embraced it with a warmth I never expected. Yet there was still a tension, a careful balance. She encouraged me, loved me, but she also reminded me that the world outside didn't understand. That the line between acceptance and exposure was fragile. I glanced at the reflection in the mirror. My makeup was subtle but precise, a soft flush to the cheeks, light eyeliner, nude lipstick that highlighted the shape of my lips without shouting. The wig framed my face perfectly, falling in gentle waves just past my shoulders. I tugged at the blouse, smoothing the fabric over my torso, ensuring the skirt fell elegantly. The heels were waiting patiently by the chair. The apartment felt unusually quiet. The usual hum of city life seemed distant, almost inconsequential compared to the storm of emotions swirling inside me. Today wasn't just another day at work. My boss had called me in, instructed me to dress up for an important presentation. What exactly he meant by that was unclear, but the phrasing carried weight, a subtle authority that made me both nervous and curious. I slid into the heels, wincing slightly at the unfamiliar pressure on my feet. It had been months since I wore these at the office. The subtle click of the heels against the floor echoed in the quiet apartment, each sound a reminder of the duality of my life. One step here, and I was Alex, the man my colleagues knew. One step there, and I was her, elegant, confident, unapologetically feminine. The reflection in the mirror caught my gaze again. Who was I becoming? Was this just a temporary performance for the office? Or was it something deeper, something that had been growing inside me for years, waiting for a chance to fully bloom? Isabella had encouraged me, yes, but the decision, the moment of exposure, had to be mine. A soft knock at the door startled me. My heart jumped. I wasn't expecting anyone. I took a deep breath, smoothing the skirt one last time. It's open, I called softly. Isabella stepped in, her expression radiant, eyes sparkling with encouragement. She adjusted the hem of my skirt slightly, a teasing smile on her lips. You look perfect, she said. Remember, confidence is key. Own it. I nodded, trying to steady my racing pulse. There was a thrill in her approval, a validation that made my stomach twist in excitement and nerves. Thanks, I whispered, feeling a flush rise to my cheeks. The walk to the office was a mixture of dread and exhilaration. Each step in heels made me aware of my posture, the sway of the skirt, the subtle tilt of my head. People passed by on the streets, none aware of the secret I carried, the persona I embodied with each careful stride. The city moved around me, oblivious to the delicate tension, the quiet storm of anticipation I held. When I reached the office, the receptionist gave me a curious glance. "Morning, Alex," she said, eyebrows slightly raised at the outfit. "Looking different today." I forced a casual smile, my voice steady, controlled.
"Morning."
"Just trying something new." The elevator ride up to my boss's floor was torturous. Each ding of the ascending floors echoed in my chest. I adjusted the blazer, smoothed the blouse again, took a deep breath. This wasn't just a routine day. This was a test of composure, of secrecy, of the delicate balance between my two lives. The door to my boss's office swung open before I could knock. He stood there, sharp and imposing, yet with a slight twinkle in his eyes that hinted at amusement. "Alex," he said, voice low and deliberate. "You're right on time. I see you followed my instructions." "Yes, sir," I replied, voice measured.
Inside, my heart raced.
The weight of exposure, of being judged, of performing not just as an employee but as someone living part of her truth, pressed heavily on me. "Good," he said, stepping aside. "Come in. Today is about more than just work. It's about presence, poise, and elegance. Are you ready?" I swallowed hard, heels clicking softly against the polished floor as I entered. "Yes," I whispered, almost to myself, almost to the reflection of the confident woman I was presenting to the world. And in that moment I realized this was more than just a task. This was the start of a journey, a test of courage, of identity, and of the thrill that comes with standing fully in oneself, no longer hiding. The elevator doors closed with a soft whoosh, leaving me in a small, confined space that felt far too intimate for my racing thoughts. Each passing floor made my pulse accelerate, and the faint scent of the office carpet seemed almost intoxicating in its normalcy. Here I was, Alex by name, yet something entirely different in essence, a side of myself only ever revealed in whispers and mirrors. The polished black heels I had chosen clicked deliberately against the metal floor, each sound a reminder that I was fully exposed, even if the world outside remained oblivious for now. I clutched the straps of my leather handbag, trying to steady the tremor in my hands. For years, I had hidden this part of myself. The joy, the thrill, the confidence that came with crossdressing. And yet, the world had never truly seen me like this. Not my coworkers, not my friends, not even those who casually walked past me on the street. Only Isabella had witnessed my transformation in full. The soft curves, the delicate sway of skirts, the careful application of makeup that made me feel alive in a way nothing else could. And now, today, my boss had demanded it. Dress for elegance. Dress for poise. Dress to impress. The words had echoed in my mind all night, stirring a mixture of dread and anticipation. There was a thrill in the challenge, an intoxicating possibility that this wasn't just about the office or an assignment. It could be a turning point, a moment where the secret I had guarded so fiercely became visible in a way I had never dared to imagine. The elevator chimed softly at my floor. I stepped out, the soft click of my heels against the polished tiles echoing in the empty hallway. The office seemed quiet, almost too quiet, as though holding its breath, waiting for the performance I was about to deliver. My reflection shimmered in the glass panels lining the corridor, soft waves of hair framing my face, blush applied to highlight my cheekbones, lips tinted with a subtle rose. The skirt fell perfectly around my knees, and the blouse hugged my torso, just right. For a moment, I caught a glimpse of myself that felt unreal, as if the woman in the reflection had been waiting for this moment all along. I reached my boss's office door and paused. My heart pounded in my chest, a drumbeat echoing my nerves and excitement. Taking a deep breath, I reminded myself of Isabella's advice. Confidence is key. Own it. I squared my shoulders, smoothed the fabric of the skirt once more, and knocked softly. "Come in," my boss's voice called. The office was exactly as I remembered it, sleek, imposing, a reflection of his sharp personality. He sat behind the mahogany desk, eyes studying me with a quiet intensity that made me swallow hard. "Alex," he said, voice low and deliberate, I see you've dressed as instructed.
Good.
Very good. I nodded, voice steady despite the trembling in my chest. Yes, sir. He gestured to the chair in front of his desk.
Sit.
Today isn't about the usual work. It's about presence, about confidence. I want you to understand how elegance changes perception, how appearance can command respect. As I lower myself into the chair, I felt a shiver of both fear and thrill. This was more than a lesson in professionalism. This was a test, a confrontation with myself, with the secret life I had so carefully hidden. Would I falter? Would my nerves betray me? Or would I finally embrace the persona I had crafted in private, revealing it in a way the world had never seen? The office lights glinted off the polished surfaces, reflecting faintly in the glass of the nearby cabinet. I noticed my reflection again. The woman I was becoming staring back at me with wide, expectant eyes. The sensation was electric, the subtle sway of the skirt as I adjusted my posture, the careful tilt of my head that made me feel taller, more poised. Every detail mattered, every movement was a test, and yet, underneath the tension, there was a thrill I couldn't suppress. Stand up, my boss instructed, voice firm but calm. Walk to the window. Posture, poise, every movement intentional. Imagine the entire room is watching you, even if they're not. I rose slowly, heels clicking against the floor, skirt swishing with each step. I could feel my pulse in my throat, the heat of anticipation rising in my chest. Standing by the window, I gazed at the city skyline, the sun reflecting off the glass towers, painting everything in golden hues. It was both grounding and surreal. Here I was, a secret part of myself now fully visible, commanding space I had never dared to occupy in the public eye. You see, he said quietly, standing behind me, perception is everything. Confidence changes how people react. Elegance poise their tools. And you, Alex, can wield them. I swallowed, absorbing his words while feeling a growing fire inside me. This wasn't just about appearances. It was about control, about self-expression, about standing fully in a truth I had long denied. The heels, the skirt, the blouse, the makeup, they were no longer mere garments. They were extensions of myself, symbols of courage and vulnerability intertwined. And then, a small noise from the hallway startled me, a coworker passing by, glancing into the office. My stomach lurched. Exposure had become more real, more immediate. The thrill of being seen was now mingled with fear. What if someone recognized me? What if my secret was at risk? I steadied my breathing, remembering Isabella's voice in my mind. Own it. Be unapologetic. I adjusted my shoulders, straightened my posture, and allowed a small, confident smile to play at my lips. The woman in the reflection met my gaze, poised, elegant, unflinching. And in that instant, I understood. This was only the beginning. Today, every step, every glance, every movement would push me further into the world I had kept hidden. Every challenge, every temptation to hide or revert, would test not just my composure, but my courage. I took another deep breath, heels clicking softly against the floor as I returned to the chair. My boss watched silently, approvingly, as I lowered myself with deliberate grace. The game had begun, the stakes were high, and the thrill of transformation surged through me like electricity. This was more than crossdressing. This was a journey, a revelation, and a confrontation with fear, all at once. And I was ready to face it, one confident step at a time. The office air felt charged, heavy with unspoken rules and the quiet hum of fluorescent lights. I sat at the desk my boss had cleared for me, fingers brushing over the smooth surface as I tried to steady my racing heart. Today wasn't just about following instructions, it was a delicate dance between control and surrender, between hiding and revealing. Each movement of my skirt, each subtle adjustment of my blouse felt loaded with meaning. I glanced down at my heels, the sharp click of the floor beneath them echoing slightly in the otherwise quiet space. Wearing them made me feel alive, almost electrified. Every inch of fabric against my skin, every curve emphasized, every flicker of blush and lipstick. It was a thrill I had only known behind closed doors. And yet, now it was real.
Public. Observed.
Isabella's words echoed in my mind, a steadying mantra amidst the tension. Confidence is everything. Own it. I took a deep breath, imagining her eyes on me, the warmth of her encouragement fueling a growing sense of power. The secret I had guarded for years was no longer a hidden indulgence. It was a living, breathing part of me. My boss moved around the office with his usual precision, checking reports and gesturing toward documents on the table. He didn't comment directly on my outfit, but every glance I caught from him was sharp, assessing, deliberate. The subtle acknowledgement, unspoken yet palpable, made my pulse race. Approval mixed with scrutiny, a potent combination that both excited and terrified me. I focused on the tasks at hand, organizing files and responding to emails with meticulous care, but my mind kept wandering. Every movement, every gesture, was a test. Could I maintain this balance? Could I project professionalism while fully inhabiting the persona I had crafted in secret? Could I be Alex in name and yet entirely someone else in essence? The sound of footsteps in the hallway startled me. I froze, heels planted firmly on the floor, heart hammering. A coworker paused outside, peering in briefly before moving on. Relief washed over me, mingled with a surge of pride.
I hadn't faltered.
My secret, for now, remained intact. And yet the adrenaline only heightened the thrill, each close call sharpening my awareness of every detail, the sway of my skirt, the tilt of my head, the way my hands rested lightly on the desk. I allowed myself a small smile, letting the persona emerge fully. Elegance wasn't just clothing. It was attitude, presence, the subtle command of space. I could feel the shift in me, the way my posture straightened, shoulders back, head high. The woman in the reflection, poised, confident, unflinching, felt real, tangible. I was no longer just Alex. I was a vision of elegance, fully alive and fully visible, even if only to a few. My boss's voice broke the spell. "Alex," he said, calm yet authoritative, "walk to the window and show me the posture we discussed. Imagine a room is full of clients. Every movement counts." I rose carefully, heels clicking softly, skirt swaying with deliberate grace. Standing at the window, I surveyed the city below, letting my mind absorb the moment. The reflection in the glass framed me perfectly, hair cascading over shoulders, soft blush highlighting my cheekbones, lips painted just enough to catch the light. My heart raced, a mixture of fear, excitement, and undeniable pride. "You see," he continued, approaching slowly, "people react to what they perceive. Confidence isn't just an internal feeling. It's external, visible. Elegance, poise, composure, they influence perception. And you, Alex, are learning to wield them." I nodded, swallowing hard, my pulse quickening. The thrill of being fully seen, fully performing, was almost intoxicating. It wasn't just about impressing my boss. It was about embracing a side of myself that had always been hidden, about stepping into a truth I had long denied. A soft knock at the office door interrupted the moment. I jumped slightly, heart leaping. My boss gave a subtle nod, and the door opened. It was a colleague bringing a stack of reports. Their eyes flicked to me, and I held their gaze confidently, offering a small, professional smile. The moment was fleeting, but the tension was immense. Every glance, every interaction was a reminder that this world, the professional office, was not mine alone. I was a performer, balancing authenticity and secrecy in a delicate, thrilling equilibrium. The colleague handed me the reports and left, leaving the office once again quiet. My boss leaned back, arms crossed, watching me carefully. "Handling distractions well," he observed.
"Good.
Maintain that focus. Elegance under pressure. That's what separates perception from reality." I exhaled slowly, letting the tension ebb slightly while acknowledging the surge of excitement that lingered. Each interaction, each subtle test, was a step deeper into the persona I had long nurtured in private. And yet, There was a whisper of anxiety beneath the thrill, a reminder that exposure could come at any moment, that one misstep could unravel the carefully constructed illusion. I adjusted my skirt, smoothing it over my hips, and ran a hand through my hair, ensuring the wig remained perfectly in place. The heels clicked softly as I returned to the desk, each step deliberate, controlled. My heartbeat settled into a rhythm, a mixture of fear and exhilaration that made every nerve feel alive. "You're doing well," my boss said quietly, breaking the tension. "Elegance, presence, composure. You're mastering it. But remember, every moment counts. One slip, one misstep, and the perception shifts. Are you prepared for that?" I nodded, lips curving into a small, confident smile. "Yes, sir," I replied, though inside, my pulse thrummed with anticipation. Every step, every gesture, every glance from him or anyone else in the office was a test of courage, identity, and control. And I was ready, because for the first time, the thrill of being seen outweighed the fear of being caught. The office hummed softly, the faint whir of the air conditioning mingling with the muted clicks of keyboards. I sat at the sleek desk, the reports my colleague had brought still neatly stacked to my side. Every time my fingers grazed the smooth surface of the desk, I felt a shiver of anticipation. Today wasn't just a day at work, it was a stage, and I was both performer and audience of my own transformation. I adjusted my blouse, feeling the fabric hug my shoulders just right, and glanced down at my skirt. The pencil cut accentuated my legs, the heels adding a subtle sway to each movement. I had spent hours in front of the mirror at home, rehearsing posture, gestures, and expressions. But the thrill, the pure, unadulterated thrill of doing it here, under my boss's watchful gaze, was unlike anything I had experienced. A sudden ring from the office phone startled me, making my heart leap. I had to quickly compose myself, ensuring the subtle elegance of my movements wasn't disrupted. Rising gracefully, I lifted the receiver, voice calm and measured. "Good morning, this is Alex." The conversation was brief, but the moment left my pulse racing. A small bead of sweat traced my temple, threatening to betray my heightened state. I ran a hand through my hair, adjusting the wig, and reminded myself, every detail mattered. Every inch of poise, every careful motion, every controlled breath was a testament to the persona I had crafted and the secret I was determined to protect. Just as I settled back into my chair, the door swung open unexpectedly. My heart jumped. A client had arrived earlier than expected. I froze, feeling the skirt cling slightly as my body tensed. The client stepped in, eyes sweeping the room, pausing for just a fraction too long as they regarded me. You must be Alex," they said, voice casual but curious. "I wasn't expecting to see you so well-presented today." I forced a confident smile, standing slowly to offer a polite handshake. The heels clicked against the floor with deliberate grace, the skirt swaying just enough to feel the thrill of attention. "Yes, sir. Welcome. I'm ready to assist you with anything you need." The client's eyes lingered a moment longer than necessary, and a shiver ran through me, equal parts fear and excitement. Exposure was no longer hypothetical, it was real. And yet, the power in this moment was undeniable. Every glance, every whisper of curiosity, reinforced the duality of who I was. Once the client left, my boss leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, a knowing smirk playing at his lips.
"See?
"Elegance under pressure," he said. "Not everyone could handle such scrutiny and maintain composure. You, Alex, are learning quickly." I exhaled slowly, letting the tension ease slightly while savoring the thrill. It wasn't just about appearance anymore. It was about control, confidence, and the intoxicating blend of vulnerability and power. The heels, the skirt, the carefully applied makeup, they weren't just clothing or accessories. They were extensions of myself, tangible proof of the courage it took to step fully into this persona. Yet even in the midst of triumph, anxiety lingered. Every footstep in the hallway, every murmur outside the office, made my pulse spike. What if someone recognized me? What if my secret was revealed? The tension was sharp, almost painful, but it heightened the excitement, transforming fear into a delicious adrenaline that I couldn't ignore. I rose to fetch a document for my boss, heels clicking against the polished floor. The movement, once simple, now carried weight. Each step was a statement, each sway a subtle assertion of confidence I had never dared to display in public. And yet, beneath the poise, my mind raced. What would Isabella think if she knew how exposed I felt right now? Would she be proud, or concerned that I was pushing the boundaries too far? A faint knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. My boss didn't move to answer it, leaving me to decide whether to acknowledge the interruption. Hesitating for a fraction too long, I finally turned, and then peeked in, eyes wide as if sensing the tension in the room. I offered a reassuring smile, and they quickly backed away, leaving the office quiet once more. The near miss sent a thrill through me, a reminder that this world, polished, professional, and public, was not my usual sanctuary. Every interaction, every glance, every minor misstep could expose the truth I had hidden for so long. And yet, the rush was undeniable. I straightened my shoulders, smoothed the skirt one more time, and returned to my desk with a sense of triumph. I was walking a tightrope, balancing fear and excitement, secrecy and revelation. Hours passed in a haze of controlled movements and subtle tests. My boss watched silently, approving yet challenging, occasionally offering feedback or instructions that forced me to maintain perfect composure. Each task, each interaction, each careful motion reinforced the dual life I led: Alex, the diligent office worker, and the woman I became when I embraced my secret identity. By the time the clock approached late afternoon, exhaustion and exhilaration mingled in my body. My legs ached from the heels, my fingers tingled from constant adjustment of papers and clothing, but the sense of accomplishment was overwhelming. I had navigated scrutiny, close calls, and internal anxiety, all while maintaining the elegance and poise demanded of me. Sitting back in the chair, I allowed a small, triumphant smile to grace my lips. I had faced fear, embraced vulnerability, and discovered power I had never fully known. The reflection in the glass framed me perfectly, poised, confident, and undeniably alive. And yet, in the quiet aftermath, a whisper of anticipation lingered. Today had been only the beginning. Challenges, surprises, and tests still awaited. Every step, every glance, every whisper of attention would push me further, forcing me to reconcile fear with exhilaration, secrecy with revelation, and Alex with the woman I had become. The office felt unusually still, the hum of computers and faint whispers of distant conversations barely registering as I continued to organize files with meticulous care. I had settled into a rhythm, a delicate balance between poise and performance, when the unexpected happened. A sudden phone call in the outer office, shrill and insistent, made me flinch. It wasn't the call itself, but the sharp, intrusive tone that broke the carefully constructed bubble of composure I had been inhabiting. I glanced toward my boss, who was reviewing documents at his desk, seemingly unbothered. But the moment's tension was contagious. My heart started to race, heels tapping lightly against the polished floor as I moved to answer the extension. "This is Alex," I said, striving to keep my voice calm, professional, and steady. "Alex? It's Isabella." The familiar voice came through, warm yet tinged with urgency. My chest tightened. I wasn't expecting her, and the timing could not have been worse. I felt a flutter of panic. How much would she see? How much would she notice about me that I had worked so hard to control? "Isabella?" I stammered slightly, trying to mask the nervous tremor in my voice. "Everything okay?" Yes, it's fine," she replied quickly. I wanted to check on you. Make sure you're all right." Her tone was sweet, caring, but it carried an undertone of curiosity that made my pulse spike. I forced a smile in the reflection of the glass panel nearby, reminding myself that confidence was key. "I'm fine, just busy with work." My words were calm, but internally, a whirlwind of panic and excitement collided. She didn't know I was dressed like this. Fully cross-dressed, heels clicking, skirt perfectly tailored, makeup subtly enhancing my features. Would she hang up, suspect something, or call again? The moment passed quickly, thankfully, and I let out a slow breath, trying to regain composure. But the incident left a lingering ripple of tension. I realized that even in a controlled environment, my double life was vulnerable to intrusion. Every unexpected interaction, every glance, every minor disruption could unravel the delicate balance I had cultivated. Trying to steady my mind, I turned back to the tasks at hand, carefully shuffling papers and arranging files. My boss observed silently, his eyes catching mine occasionally, sharp and calculating. There was no need for words. The challenge was clear. Elegance wasn't just about appearance. It was about composure, about handling surprises without faltering. And in this moment, I understood that my inner turmoil was as much a part of the test as the physical performance of poise and femininity. The next task was even more challenging. A group of visiting executives arrived unexpectedly, their presence announced by the soft click of heels on the hallway floor and murmured greetings that carried into the office. My boss looked up, nodding subtly, and gestured for me to handle the introductions. Rising slowly, I adjusted my skirt, smoothed the blouse over my shoulders, and stepped forward. The heels clicked decisively, skirt swaying with deliberate elegance. Every movement was magnified under the watchful eyes of both my boss and the executives. I offered handshakes, smiles, and carefully modulated greetings, each interaction requiring perfect balance between professionalism and the subtle embodiment of my secret persona. A close call came when one of the executives glanced at me with a look of curiosity, eyes lingering a moment too long. My pulse spiked, and I felt the familiar thrill of exposure wash over me. My breath caught slightly, but I maintained a poised smile, careful to project calm and confidence. The sway of my skirt, the tilt of my head, the subtle grace of my movements, all became tools to deflect attention while simultaneously embracing the secret identity that made me feel alive. Once the executives were settled, my boss leaned back, arms crossed, and observed me with a mixture of approval and scrutiny. "Handling unexpected attention well," he remarked quietly. "Elegance under pressure, Alex. That's exactly what I wanted you to learn." I exhaled slowly, letting the tension ebb slightly while savoring the rush. Each obstacle, each surprise, was a test not only of skill but of courage and identity. The thrill of maintaining my secret, even under scrutiny, was intoxicating. Every moment I walked the line between fear and exhilaration reinforced the persona I had crafted in private and now brought to life in the public eye. Yet even in triumph, anxiety lingered. What if Isabella knew how exposed I'd felt just now? What if my performance faltered at the next challenge? Each step, each gesture, each glance carried weight. The heels pinched slightly, the skirt felt tighter than before, but these minor discomforts only heightened my awareness, sharpening my focus on the delicate balance between control and vulnerability. Hours passed with minor interruptions, phone calls, emails, and occasional visitors, each testing my composure in subtle ways. I adjusted my posture, smoothed my hair, and maintained the persona with deliberate precision. By mid-afternoon, I felt a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. I had navigated close calls, managed unexpected attention, and maintained elegance under scrutiny. The woman in the reflection, poised, confident, undeniably alive, had fully emerged. And yet, a quiet, thrilling tension remained, the knowledge that at any moment, another unexpected twist could push me further, test me harder, and force me to confront the delicate interplay between fear, excitement, and self-expression. This was no longer just cross-dressing in private. This was a public performance with high stakes, one that demanded courage, skill, and a willingness to embrace vulnerability. The office had grown quieter as the day wore on, the soft hum of the air conditioning and distant conversations barely breaking the tension that clung to every corner. I sat at my desk, the elegant lines of my blouse and the careful cut of my skirt emphasizing every movement. The heels I wore had started to dig slightly into my feet, but the discomfort was drowned out by the pulse of excitement and anxiety running through me. Today was not just about completing tasks. It was about testing boundaries, embracing vulnerability, and proving to myself that I could inhabit this persona fully. My boss, ever observant, moved around the office with a quiet authority, occasionally giving subtle instructions or feedback that forced me to adjust posture, expression, or movement. Each command was a reminder that perfection was expected, that any slip could reveal the delicate secret I had so carefully nurtured. Yet, beneath the pressure, a strange exhilaration flowed through me. This was not fear alone. It was the intoxicating thrill of being truly seen, of stepping into a version of myself I had long hidden from the world. A sudden knock at the door made me start, heels clicking against the floor as I turned toward the sound. It was a junior colleague, bright-eyed and curious, bringing in a stack of files for review. Their glance lingered for a moment longer than necessary, and I felt the familiar jolt of adrenaline. Exposure was always a possibility. But I smiled, maintaining perfect composure, letting my posture convey confidence and ease. Every detail mattered. The tilt of my head, the placement of my hands, the gentle sway of my skirt. Once they left, the silence returned, punctuated only by the soft click of my keyboard and the occasional rustle of papers. I allowed myself a brief moment to catch my reflection in the glass partition beside my desk. The woman staring back was fully formed, poised, and confident, every detail perfected, makeup blended seamlessly, hair framing my face in soft waves, skirt and blouse highlighting curves I had once only admired in secret. I had become her completely, and the sensation was intoxicating. Yet, with the thrill came tension. The day had already tested me with close calls, unexpected visitors, phone calls from Isabella, and the constant scrutiny of my boss. Each moment reminded me that my secret was fragile, that any lapse could lead to discovery. And the more I embraced this version of myself, the more thrilling and terrifying the stakes became. My boss approached, quiet footsteps soft against the floor. "Alex," he said, voice calm but deliberate, "I have one final task for today. You'll need to present the summary to the senior executives arriving shortly. Poise, clarity, and elegance are non-negotiable. Are you ready?" I nodded, swallowing hard, feeling the tightness of both anticipation and anxiety coil in my chest. This was the ultimate test, to maintain composure and elegance under scrutiny, while fully inhabiting the persona I had cultivated in private. Every heartbeat echoed in my ears as I rose, smoothing my skirt and adjusting my blouse. The heels added a deliberate sway to each step, the skirt brushing my legs in a rhythm that made my pulse spike. Standing before the window to adjust posture, I caught my reflection once more. The image was complete, poised, confident, undeniably feminine. The thrill surged anew, mingled with the edge of fear. What if I faltered now? What if a careless gesture revealed the truth? Yet beneath the tension, a deep satisfaction bloomed. I was embracing a side of myself I had long denied, and the world, at least for this moment, was witnessing it. The executives arrived, their presence announced by muted conversation and soft footsteps. My boss nodded subtly, and I moved to greet them, heels clicking with deliberate grace. Every gesture, every smile, every tilt of my head had been rehearsed, refined, and now tested under real scrutiny. My pulse raced as the executives examined documents, asked questions, and interacted with me. I responded with calm precision, projecting both professionalism and the subtle elegance that had become my second skin. Halfway through, a sudden noise from the hallway drew my attention, a fleeting shadow of someone passing by the glass panel.
My heart leapt.
Could they see me? Was this an unplanned interruption that would expose the persona I had so carefully constructed? I steadied my breath, adjusted the wig with one hand, and maintained perfect composure, every nerve alert and alive. By the end of the meeting, I had navigated scrutiny, unexpected distractions, and the pressure of performance, without faltering. My boss's approving nod and the executive's polite smiles were a silent acknowledgement of my success. I allowed a quiet exhale, letting tension and exhilaration mingle in my body. The woman I had become was fully realized, and for a brief moment, I allowed myself to bask in the triumph. Yet the edge of suspense remained. Every second in this office, every glance, every interaction carried the potential for exposure. Isabella's unexpected calls, the close scrutiny of my boss, the casual glances of coworkers, all were reminders that this journey was far from over. I was poised at the brink of revelation, balancing thrill and fear, secrecy and identity, and knowing that the climax of this story was only moments away. I smoothed my skirt one final time, feeling the subtle tension of the fabric against my legs, and ran a hand through the soft waves of my hair. My reflection caught my gaze once more, eyes meeting their own in the glass. Confidence, poise, elegance, these were no longer aspirations, but lived realities. And yet, beneath it all, a quiet question lingered. How long could I maintain this balance before everything changed? The office was bathed in the golden light of late afternoon, the shadows stretching long across the polished floor. I stood near my desk, heels clicking softly as I adjusted the hem of my skirt, every movement measured, deliberate. The executives had left only moments ago, leaving a fragile calm that felt almost unnatural. My boss sat back in his chair, fingers steepled, eyes watching me with that sharp, assessing gaze that had become both a challenge and a thrill. "Alex," he said quietly, voice calm but commanding, "there's something I want to test. A scenario. Are you ready?" My heart jumped, a surge of adrenaline flooding my veins. "Yes, sir," I replied, careful to keep my voice steady, though my pulse betrayed the tension coiling in my chest. "Good," he said, rising slowly. "Imagine an unexpected visitor arrives, someone unfamiliar, someone who doesn't know you. You must maintain your poise, elegance, and composure, no matter what they see or say." I nodded, swallowing hard. The thrill of the challenge mingled with fear. This was more than a test of poise, it was a test of identity. How far could I go without faltering? How much could I reveal, and yet remain unseen? Almost immediately, the moment arrived. A soft knock on the door echoed through the office, followed by a voice I didn't recognize. "Is anyone here?" I was told to bring these files to Alex. My pulse skyrocketed. This was it, the test. I smoothed my skirt, tilted my chin slightly, and opened the door, revealing a young intern, eyes wide with surprise as they took in my fully transformed appearance. "Ah, Alex," the intern stammered, brow furrowed. I could see the curiosity, the confusion, the subtle recognition of something different. "Yes," I said, voice calm and poised, though my hands trembled slightly as I accepted the files. "These are for me. Thank you." My boss watched silently from across the room, a subtle smirk forming on his lips. The tension in the air was electric, each second stretching longer as I maintained composure under scrutiny. Every gesture, every tilt of my head, every carefully modulated tone of voice mattered. I was performing, yet simultaneously revealing a truth I had kept hidden for so long. The intern lingered, curiosity flickering in their gaze. You look different today," they said carefully, almost hesitant. "Is this the new style?" I smiled politely, the corner of my lips lifting just enough to appear warm yet controlled. "Yes," I said softly. "I'm experimenting with a more professional look. It's part of the role I've been learning." The intern nodded slowly, clearly trying to process the sudden change. I handed over the files with steady hands, heels clicking decisively as I guided them toward the door. Every movement was deliberate, precise, controlled. The thrill of exposure was almost intoxicating, but beneath it, a thread of fear ran like electricity through my body. One wrong word, one hesitation, and the carefully constructed illusion could crumble. As the door closed behind the intern, I exhaled slowly, but the tension didn't release. My boss rose, walking over to the desk with measured steps, eyes never leaving mine. "Well done," he said quietly. But the challenge isn't over. There's one more test. My stomach tightened. Another one? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm, though it wavered slightly. Yes, he said, leaning slightly closer. Isabella is coming in. She doesn't know the extent of your transformation. I want to see how you handle it. My breath caught. Isabella, my girlfriend, the one person who knew my heart better than anyone, was coming into this space. The thought of her seeing me fully transformed, heels clicking, skirt perfectly tailored, makeup flawless, sent a shiver down my spine. Could I maintain composure? Could I navigate both her surprise and the lingering thrill of my secret life? Minutes felt like hours as I adjusted my posture, smoothed my skirt, and took a deep, steadying breath. Every detail mattered. Hair perfectly arranged, blush blended seamlessly, lips soft but defined. I was no longer just Alex. I was the elegant secretary my boss had guided me to become, and now the ultimate test awaited. The soft click of heels in the hallway announced her arrival. My pulse raced, throat dry, hands trembling ever so slightly. I moved to greet her, keeping my voice calm, tone warm yet professional. Isabella, I said softly, the sound of her name a mix of comfort and tension. Her eyes widened as they swept over me, taking in the full transformation. The skirt, the blouse, the heels, the hair, it was all so precise, so deliberate, and yet undeniably me. A mixture of surprise, curiosity, and something deeper flickered across her face. You look different, she whispered, voice barely audible. I could see the questions forming in her mind, the sudden awareness that the person standing before her was both familiar and entirely new. I smiled gently, keeping posture straight, heels planted firmly. It's a new look, I said softly. I've been exploring something different. The tension in the room was palpable, electric. My boss stood back, observing silently, while Isabella took a step closer, eyes never leaving mine. Every second stretched, heavy with possibility. Exposure was imminent, yet I felt a strange exhilaration. The thrill of being fully seen, the fear of discovery, the excitement of revelation all mingling into one. And then, just as I thought I had maintained perfect composure, Isabella stepped closer, a hand brushing lightly against my arm in a gesture of curiosity, almost testing, almost intimate. My breath caught. The heels, the skirt, the careful elegance, all of it became a delicate, thrilling balance on the edge of discovery. The office felt smaller somehow, the sunlight fading outside, leaving elongated shadows that seemed to stretch toward me. Every movement felt amplified, the soft click of my heels against the polished floor echoing like a heartbeat. Isabella's gaze lingered, curious, almost scrutinizing, and my pulse spiked with a mix of anticipation and dread. I had maintained composure perfectly so far, but now the stakes had shifted. Her presence brought an emotional intensity that no amount of rehearsal could fully prepare me for. I didn't expect this, Isabella murmured, voice low, almost hesitant. Her eyes traced the lines of my skirt, the subtle curve of my blouse, the carefully applied makeup that emphasized features she knew well yet now saw differently. The recognition and surprise in her expression made my stomach tighten. I swallowed, forcing a calm smile. It's something I've been trying, I said softly, careful to keep my tone even. Just experimenting with a more professional look. Her lips parted slightly, and I could see the mixture of curiosity and confusion swirling in her eyes. It's very different, she said, voice barely audible. Elegant. I hardly recognize you like this. A shiver of thrill ran through me. Recognition, yes, but so much more than that. This was the first time Isabella was seeing me fully as the woman I had become in private. Every detail of my appearance, every carefully controlled gesture, was under her gaze. And yet, even as excitement surged, so did the fear of what might happen next. Before I could respond, a loud crash came from the other side of the office. A stack of folders had fallen from a nearby shelf, papers scattering across the floor. My heart leapt into my throat as I bent quickly to retrieve them, heels precariously balanced. The rustle of paper, the sudden motion. It felt like an alarm bell in the quiet room. Isabella stepped forward instinctively, concern flashing across her face. "Are you okay?" she asked, her hand reaching out toward mine. I nodded quickly, cheeks warming, voice calm despite the chaos. "I'm fine," I said, glancing up at her with what I hoped was convincing composure. Just a little clumsy moment. The papers collected, I rose slowly, adjusting my skirt and smoothing my blouse. The near mishap had left my heart pounding, reminding me how delicate this balance was. One slip, one misstep, one unexpected interaction could unravel everything. And yet, the thrill of being fully seen, fully present in this identity, was more intoxicating than ever. My boss, standing silently nearby, observed the interaction with quiet amusement. His presence was a reminder that while Isabella's curiosity was one challenge, the subtle scrutiny of my mentor, my guide into this world, added an entirely different layer of tension. I was caught between two worlds, the emotional vulnerability before Isabella and the controlled, high-stakes performance my boss demanded. Isabella tilted her head, her eyes narrowing slightly, as if trying to understand the essence of this transformation. "Alex, or should I say this version of you," she said softly, "how long have you been experimenting like this?" The question hung in the air, heavier than any words that had come before. I felt the familiar tug of fear, exposure, judgment, misunderstanding, and excitement. The thrill of sharing, of being seen in a truth long hidden. I hesitated, caught between honesty and discretion, before speaking carefully. "For a while," I admitted softly, voice barely above a whisper. "It started small just at home, but I realized I felt more like myself this way." Her eyes softened slightly, but curiosity remained. "More like yourself?" she echoed, as though testing the concept. The subtle warmth in her tone was comforting, yet the vulnerability it evoked in me made the room feel electrified with possibility. Before I could continue, the phone rang sharply from the front desk. My head snapped toward it, heart leaping. It was unexpected, intrusive, a potential disaster. I took a deep breath and composed myself, picking up the receiver. "Alex? It's the senior client," came the urgent voice. "I have a last-minute request. Can you handle it?" "Yes, of course," I replied quickly, trying to keep the tone professional. But my mind raced. Isabella was watching, my boss was observing, and here was yet another test thrown into the already volatile mix. My pulse raced as I hung up, feeling the weight of scrutiny pressing down on every detail of my appearance, every word I had spoken, every subtle gesture I had made. Isabella stepped closer again, her gaze intense. "I can't tell if you're nervous or excited," she said softly, almost teasing, almost probing. "I've never seen you like this." I smiled faintly, swallowing the lump in my throat. "A little of both," I admitted. "It's thrilling. And terrifying." Her lips curved into a faint, knowing smile, and for a moment, the room seemed suspended in time. Every nerve in my body hummed with anticipation, the heels, the skirt, the blouse, the makeup, all details heightened by the close attention of someone who knew me intimately yet was now seeing a version of me she had never encountered. A sudden knock interrupted the fragile intimacy. Another in turn, this time slightly older and less familiar, entered with a stack of documents. My boss raised an eyebrow, silently watching as I guided the newcomer, answered questions, and maintained composure. Each movement, each word, each glance was a test of balance, between fear and thrill, secrecy and revelation, professional poise and hidden identity. By the end of this whirlwind, I felt both drained and exhilarated. The near exposures, the close calls, and the intense observation had pushed me to the edge. I had maintained elegance under pressure, confronted fear head-on, and embraced a side of myself long hidden from the world. Yet the tension remained, fragile, electric, and unresolved. The office felt tighter, every sound amplified in the sudden silence that followed the departure of the interns. My heart pounded like a drum in my chest as I tried to steady my breath. The heels I wore clicked sharply against a polished floor, each step echoing like a warning in the tense air. Isabella remained near the desk, her eyes tracing every subtle movement, every graceful tilt of my head, every sway of my skirt. She seemed to be analyzing, trying to understand the persona she was witnessing, her own boyfriend transformed into someone wholly new. "You've really changed," she whispered, voice trembling slightly with surprise and curiosity. Her gaze lingered on my hands, delicate and precise as I arranged papers, and then rose to meet mine, wide and searching. I can't tell if I should be amazed or worried. I swallowed hard, the tension coiling in my stomach like a spring. "It's something I needed to explore," I said softly, striving for calm, poise, and elegance. "I feel more like myself this way." Her eyes softened, a flicker of warmth passing through the intensity. "More like yourself, or more like someone else?" she asked gently, her tone probing but tender. Before I could answer, a sharp knock on the office door startled both of us. My pulse jumped as I turned toward the sound. "Come in," I said carefully, voice steady despite the sudden surge of adrenaline. A familiar face appeared in the doorway, one of our senior executives, early and unannounced. His eyes swept the room, pausing just long enough to notice my fully transformed appearance. My chest tightened, every nerve on edge. This was the ultimate test. Composure under the scrutiny of someone who didn't know the secret, someone whose judgment could change everything. "Alex," the executive said, voice calm but assessing, "I need those reports finalized immediately. Can you handle it?" "Yes," I replied, swallowing hard. My fingers trembled slightly as I picked up the files, heels clicking with deliberate care as I guided him toward the conference room. Every movement had to be precise, every gesture measured. One wrong step, one falter in poise, and my carefully constructed image could unravel in an instant. Isabella followed quietly, curiosity still evident in her eyes. I could feel her silent scrutiny as we moved through the office, my nerves straining under the dual pressure of performing for my boss, satisfying the executive, and maintaining the secrecy of my transformation in front of someone who knew me intimately. We reached the conference room, and I placed the files on the table, smoothing each corner, adjusting the alignment with meticulous care. The executive nodded, satisfied, and left without another word, leaving me trembling slightly from the adrenaline surge. Returning to my desk, I let out a slow, shaky breath. Isabella was close, and the intensity of her gaze was almost overwhelming. "Alex, you handled that beautifully," she said softly, voice low and sincere. I can't believe how poised you were. But tell me, are you okay?" Inside, I hesitated, torn between the exhilaration of exposure and the fear of vulnerability. I admitted finally, voice barely above a whisper. "But it's scary. Every moment feels like a test. Every glance, every unexpected visitor, it's thrilling and terrifying at the same time." She stepped closer, placing a hand gently on my arm. Her touch sent a jolt through me, grounding yet heightening the intensity of the moment. "I want to understand," she said softly. "I want to see this side of you fully, but it's still a lot." I nodded, feeling the rush of emotion swirl inside me. "It is, but it's who I am, at least a part of me. And today, I've lived it fully under scrutiny, under pressure. And I've survived." The tension remained, though. Every moment in this office had been a test, every glance a challenge. I had maintained elegance, grace, and composure under conditions designed to expose me. Yet now, standing so close to Isabella, I realized the true climax wasn't just the scrutiny of my boss or the executives. It was the emotional risk, the vulnerability of revealing this part of myself to someone I loved and trusted. And just as I allowed myself a brief moment of relief, a soft creak echoed from the hallway. My boss appeared at the doorway, eyes gleaming with a mixture of satisfaction and mischief. "Impressive," he said quietly. "But the final challenge is now. Can you maintain this poise when everything could fall apart?" My pulse quickened again. The room felt suspended in tension, every element, heels, skirt, blouse, makeup, my own heartbeat, poised on the edge of revelation. Every glance from Isabella, every word from my boss, every movement I made carried the weight of exposure. The thrill, the fear, the excitement, and the vulnerability collided into a single, electrifying moment. And I knew whatever happened next would define not just this afternoon, but the balance between the life I had hidden and the identity I was finally embracing. The office seemed to hold its breath. Every sound, the soft click of my heels, the distant hum of the elevator, Isabella's gentle breathing, felt amplified, magnified by the intensity of the moment. My boss leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, observing every subtle shift in my posture, every nuanced expression on my face. I could feel the weight of expectation pressing down, and my pulse raced like a drumbeat of tension. Isabella's eyes were locked on mine, filled with curiosity, admiration, and a flicker of something unreadable, perhaps a hint of concern, perhaps excitement. "Alex, you've really committed to this," she whispered, voice soft but laced with incredulity. "I didn't realize how much this changed you." Before I could respond, the office door burst open with a jolt. A familiar face appeared, one of the company's senior auditors, unexpectedly early and carrying a stack of papers. My heart leapt into my throat. This was the kind of scenario I had feared, unplanned, uncontrollable, impossible to fully manage. "Alex," the auditor exclaimed, voice brisk but not unkind. "We need these reports finalized immediately. Can you take care of them?" I froze for a split second, feeling the full weight of exposure threatening to collapse around me. The heels felt suddenly precarious beneath me, my skirt brushing nervously against my thighs, and the elegant blouse seemed too formal, too delicate for the chaos that had erupted. Every detail of my transformation, the wig, the makeup, the careful posture, now seemed hypervisible, each element a potential point of failure. I straightened slowly, forcing a controlled breath. "Of course," I said, voice steady, hands trembling ever so slightly as I accepted the papers. My pulse surged, the adrenaline sharpening every sense. I could feel Isabella's eyes on me, silently urging, silently testing. I had to maintain composure, elegance, and professionalism, even as the situation spiraled toward the edge of exposure. As I began arranging the documents on my desk, the auditor glanced up, eyes narrowing for a brief, almost imperceptible moment. "Alex, you look different," they said carefully, voice probing yet polite. "Is this the new professional style?" I smiled faintly, forcing warmth into my tone. "Yes, I've been trying something new," I replied. "It's part of the role I've been learning." The auditor nodded slowly, seemingly satisfied, but the tension didn't leave. Every interaction felt like walking a tightrope. One misstep, one hesitation, one flicker of doubt, and the illusion of my transformation could shatter completely. Meanwhile, Isabella remained near, her expression a mix of intrigue and concern. "You're handling this so well," she murmured. "I can't believe how composed you are. But are you sure you're okay?" "I am," I said softly, though the truth was more complex. I was exhilarated, terrified, and vulnerable all at once. The thrill of exposure, the fear of judgment, and the satisfaction of embodying a version of myself I had long suppressed collided in a dizzying rush. Suddenly, the office phone rang sharply, making me jump. I reached for it, heels clicking sharply on the floor, and answered with as much calm as I could muster. "Alex speaking," I said, voice steady despite the chaos. It was my boss. "A minor fire alarm drill," he said casually, though I could sense the underlying test in his tone. "Everyone must evacuate immediately. How you manage this interruption will demonstrate your composure under pressure." My breath caught. A fire drill, unplanned, chaotic, uncontrollable, was the perfect storm for a potential disaster. Papers could fly, heels could slip, makeup could smudge, and all the careful poise I had cultivated could unravel in an instant. Yet beneath the fear, a thrill surged. This was the ultimate test. Composure in complete uncertainty, elegance under chaos, the apex of suspense. Isabella's hand brushed mine as she moved closer. "Stay calm," she whispered. Her proximity was grounding, yet electrifying. Every nerve in my body hummed with tension, fear, and exhilaration simultaneously. I glanced at my boss, who nodded subtly, a silent acknowledgement of the challenge. I squared my shoulders, adjusted my skirt, and began guiding everyone toward the exit, heels clicking decisively. Each step required perfect balance, each movement precision under scrutiny. The office was alive with tension, the usual order disrupted, and my secret identity at the edge of potential exposure. And just as we reached the stairwell, a sudden noise echoed from behind. A misplaced file slid from the table, crashing to the floor with a startling clatter. My heart leapt. Isabella gasped softly. My boss's gaze flickered, a hint of amusement and approval mixed in. Every second stretched, each movement a delicate dance on the razor's edge of discovery. I bent gracefully to pick up the file, feeling the soft swish of my skirt, the subtle tension of my blouse, and the precarious balance of my heels. The proximity of Isabella, the scrutiny of my boss, and the chaos of the drill fused into a moment of pure adrenaline and heightened suspense. By the time we exited the office, the drill concluded, and the calm began to return. I felt an intoxicating mix of relief, triumph, and lingering anxiety. The tests, interruptions, and near exposures had pushed me to the brink, yet I had maintained my poise, elegance, and identity under immense pressure. And yet, as I caught my reflection in the stairwell glass, I realized the tension was far from over. Each glance from Isabella, each subtle nod from my boss, each heartbeat reminded me that the ultimate challenge, acceptance, revelation, and confrontation, was still ahead. The office was quiet again, the fire drill concluded, but the tension clung to the room like a heavy fog. My heels clicked softly against the floor as I walked toward my desk, each step deliberate, calculated. Isabella's presence lingered nearby, her gaze following every movement. My boss stood at the doorway, his arms crossed, eyes sharp and assessing. Every nerve in my body hummed with anticipation. "You've done well," my boss said quietly, voice low but commanding. "But there's one final scenario. Are you ready?" My stomach tightened, heart hammering in my chest. "Yes," I replied, striving for calm, though a thrill of fear and excitement surged through me. "Imagine a colleague, someone you trust, enters unexpectedly," he said, stepping closer. "They don't know your secret. How will you handle it without losing composure?" Before I could respond, the office door opened slowly. My colleague, someone I had shared casual conversations and friendly banter with, stepped in carrying a laptop bag. Their eyes widened slightly as they took in my fully transformed appearance, the skirt, blouse, heels, makeup, and hair, all perfectly arranged. "Alex," they said, voice hesitant. Is that really you?" Every muscle in my body tensed. My mind raced, calculating, planning. The thrill of exposure surged, mingling with fear. This was the moment I had dreaded and secretly hoped for, the ultimate confrontation of identity and perception. I forced a calm smile, lifting my chin gracefully. "Yes," I said softly, voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "It's me. Just a new style, a new approach to my role." The colleague blinked, their gaze flicking between me and the laptop bag. "Wow, you look different. Elegant, professional, almost unrecognizable." A shiver of exhilaration ran through me. Recognition, fear, validation, all tangled together. Isabella stepped closer, her hand brushing lightly against mine, grounding me while simultaneously intensifying every emotion. My boss watched silently, a subtle smirk playing on his lips. "Observe," he said quietly, letting the interaction unfold naturally. I guided my colleague to the desk, answering questions and giving directions with precise gestures and controlled tone. Every movement, every word was carefully calibrated. The tension of near exposure made my heartbeat thunder in my ears, yet the act of navigating the scenario filled me with a heady mix of empowerment and vulnerability. Isabella's eyes softened, a flicker of admiration and curiosity crossing her face. "Alex, you're amazing," she whispered. "I've never seen you handle something like this, so poised, so confident, yet so vulnerable." I swallowed, feeling a lump in my throat. "It's thrilling," I admitted, voice low. "And terrifying. But I feel alive like this, exposed and elegant at the same time." The colleague nodded, seemingly impressed but not prying further. "Well, I'll leave you to it then," they said finally, stepping back toward the door. "Just wow." The click of the closing door reverberated in the silence. Relief washed over me, mingled with lingering adrenaline. I turned toward Isabella, who was smiling faintly, eyes gleaming with warmth and intrigue. "You did it," she said softly. "Every test, every interruption, you stayed perfect. But what happens now? Can this balance last?" I exhaled slowly, realizing the gravity of her question. The challenges had tested every facet of my poise, every detail of my appearance, every hidden aspect of my identity. I had survived scrutiny, maintained elegance, and navigated potential exposure with careful precision. But the tension was far from over. My boss cleared his throat. "Impressive," he said, voice steady. "You've proven that you can maintain composure, elegance, and identity under pressure. But remember, the final challenge is acceptance. How far are you willing to go? How much of this identity will you reveal, and to whom?" The question hung heavy in the room. Every glance, every heartbeat, every subtle detail of my transformation now carried weight beyond aesthetics or performance. This was no longer a test of skill. It was a test of trust, vulnerability, and the willingness to embrace a part of myself that had long remained hidden. Isabella stepped closer, placing a hand gently on my cheek. "Alex, I see you," she said softly, voice tender but steady. "Not just the elegance, the style, the poise. I see you. All of you. But what will this mean for us?" I felt a shiver of anticipation and fear ripple through me. The heels, the skirt, the blouse, the hair, the makeup, they were more than tools of transformation. They were symbols of identity, expression, and courage. I realized in that moment that the ultimate risk was not falling, being exposed, or judged. It was the possibility of fully revealing who I truly was and trusting someone else to accept it. And then, just as the intensity reached its peak, a sharp knock echoed from the hallway. My boss glanced toward the door, a faint smirk crossing his face. Isabella and I exchanged a quick, startled glance. The unknown visitor could change everything in an instant. I straightened, smoothing my skirt and adjusting my hair, breath steadying despite the racing pulse. Every detail mattered now, the final seconds, the ultimate reveal, the brink of exposure. The office was suspended in anticipation, every heartbeat amplified, every glance charged with suspense. And in that suspended moment, I realized that no matter what happened next, my life had changed forever. I was no longer hiding. I was visible, elegant, and vulnerable all at once. The hallway outside the office felt impossibly still. Every breath I took sounded loud. Every heartbeat thumped like a warning drum in my ears. Isabella's hand was still brushing mine, her warmth grounding me even as the fear of exposure surged stronger than ever. The knock at the door had left the entire office on edge, and now, seconds stretched into eternity as we waited. My boss remained by the doorway, a faint smirk on his lips, his gaze sharp, calculating. "Every choice you make now," he said quietly, "will determine how far you're willing to go. Are you prepared?" I nodded, though inwardly, uncertainty clawed at me. My transformation, my poise, my elegance, all of it had been a carefully orchestrated performance. But now every test, every challenge, every glance from Isabella or my boss had led to this moment. The stakes were higher than ever, the possibility of exposure imminent. The office door opened slowly. A shadow filled the frame, and my stomach dropped. The visitor's face was partially obscured, but I could feel the weight of their gaze before it even fell upon me. Every muscle in my body tensed. This was the moment that could unravel everything I had built, my identity, my secret, my elegance. Alex. The voice was familiar but cautious, tinged with surprise. I wasn't expecting anyone else here. I forced a polite smile, keeping my posture straight, my hands steady. Just wrapping up some final details, I replied smoothly. Everything is under control. Isabella's eyes met mine, a mix of curiosity, admiration, and silent questioning. Could she trust me fully? Could I reveal this side of myself completely, without fear? My boss's gaze remained fixed, evaluating, as though the slightest misstep could tip the scales. The visitor stepped fully into the office, and suddenly a small noise, the faint slip of a heel on the polished floor, echoed. My pulse leapt into my throat. For a fraction of a second, I felt as though time had stopped. Every second, every motion, every word mattered. The elegance I had cultivated, the identity I had embraced, could vanish in an instant. The visitor blinked, then smiled faintly, seemingly unthreatened but curious. Alex, you look different, they said, voice calm. Elegant, poised. I didn't know you could transform like this. A shiver ran through me. Recognition, acknowledgement, and the thrill of being seen, all mingled with a sharp stab of fear. How much did they know? How much had been noticed already? I forced a small, composed nod. Yes, I said softly. It's a new approach, something I've been exploring. Isabella's hand tightened around mine, grounding me even as the suspense mounted. My boss watched silently, his eyes gleaming with the knowledge that this was the ultimate test. Could I maintain control, elegance, and composure while facing potential exposure? Could I navigate the thin line between vulnerability and poise? The visitor stepped closer, examining the details, the wig, the makeup, the carefully arranged skirt and blouse, the poised movements. I admire your confidence, they said quietly. But I have to ask, how long can you keep this up without being discovered? My stomach tightened, the tension in the room becoming almost tangible. The question was innocent, yet loaded. Every word was a probe, every glance a potential revelation. I opened my mouth to answer, but the words caught in my throat. Honesty could expose me. Deception could preserve the secret, but feel like a betrayal. Isabella's gaze met mine, warm and understanding, yet questioning. She was waiting for my choice, to reveal fully or maintain the fragile balance. The tension between us, between all present in the room, was electric, charged with anticipation and fear. Suddenly, my boss cleared his throat. This is where your true test begins, he said calmly. Every identity has its moment of revelation. How you handle it now will define not just your elegance, but the trust and perception of everyone in this room. The visitor paused, curiosity piqued, eyes flicking toward me with gentle intensity. Isabella's hand brushed my cheek, grounding me and offering silent encouragement. Every nerve in my body was taut with suspense. And then, at the edge of the room, the office phone rang sharply. Everyone froze. The sound sliced through the tension like a knife. My mind raced. Who could it be? What news would arrive that might unravel everything? I reached for the phone, taking a slow, deep breath to steady my racing heart. The reflection in the polished surface of the desk caught my eye, a perfectly poised secretary, elegant, composed, and yet trembling inside. This was the duality I had lived with, the delicate balance between identity and exposure. I answered, voice steady despite the adrenaline. Alex speaking. The voice on the other end was calm, yet carried weight. Alex, we need to see you immediately. There's an issue, and it concerns your department. My pulse spiked. The tension was now absolute. Exposure, revelation, and consequence collided in a single heartbeat. I glanced at Isabella, who squeezed my hand gently, silently saying, "You can handle this." My boss nodded, approvingly yet with an unspoken challenge. I swallowed hard, breath steadying as I realized the truth. No matter what happened next, the life I had been hiding, the elegance I had cultivated, and the identity I had embraced would never be the same again. Every choice, every movement, Every word from this moment forward could redefine everything. And then, just as I started to rise from my seat, a loud knock echoed from the hallway, sharper, more deliberate, and closer than before. My boss's eyes gleamed. Isabella's eyes widened. The visitor froze. The door handle rattled, and I knew in that instant that the next few seconds would determine everything. Would my secret be revealed? Would the balance of power, trust, and identity shift irreversibly? I took a slow, deliberate breath, smoothing my skirt one final time, adjusting my blouse, and lifting my chin. The elegance I had built, the poise I had maintained, and the dual life I had navigated were all at a precipice. The door opened slightly, the shadow of an unknown figure filling the frame, and the room held its collective breath.